Hello everyone and welcome back to my Unmatched Strategy Guide series, this time covering Nikola Tesla, one of the newer fighters to be released in the Tales to Amaze set. Um, we'll start with the basic stats. Tesla is a ranged fighter, move 2, with 14 health, and as we know, move 2 is not so great, but being ranged is definitely better than being melee. You have more board control and are more versatile to attack. 14 HP on the other side sucks. The average right now is around 15.4, so also being a solo fighter means you have solo fighter issues. You can get kited very easily. All attacks are directed towards your hero, Tesla himself. No sidekicks to body block, nothing. That makes the 14 HP kinda even worse, but we'll see Tesla has some ways to get around that. The total health pool is also 14 because he has no sidekicks or something like that, which is, just like I said, horrible. The total health pool average is around 18.9, so we can say around 19. But, like I said, Tesla has 7 healing in the deck, which kinda makes you get up to 21 health. But we'll talk about that later when we get to the specific cards. Um, and concerning the cards, he has 11 unique cards, which is great for consistency. Usually, fighters are considered consistent if they have like 12 or 13 different cards without any one-offs. And above that, it gets a bit fuzzy, but 11 is definitely great for a character like Tesla. Because we'll see for his character ability, um, it says Electrical Overflow. Start the game with one coil charged. At the end of your turn, charge one coil. At the start of your turn, if both coils are charged, deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter adjacent to Tesla and move them up to 1 space. Okay, that's a bit a lot. So Tesla has a fluid resource, being coils. So he can spend coils, gains coils through card effects, and his ability at the end of the turn. First of all, gaining a fluid resource automatically is great. So you don't have to rely only on your cards and luck to charge them. It's not like with something like Alice or Bayo, where you kind of can't control your stuff. Bayo not really controlling his rage, except for Epic Poem and the Wicklow card, and Alice with her size changes. All of those are only bound to card effects or your opponent doing stuff. This is automatic. Your opponent can't do anything against that, which is great. Then, um, dealing damage at the start of your turn to adjacent fighters is great. Auto damage is always good, and especially against melee fighters who have to approach you, that will result in some nasty damage, and also it's great to kill off one health sidekicks. Um, Also, one note, you must deal the damage. It's not you may deal, you just deal it. Uh, Other than the movement is optional, but that's also nice because you can, like I said, if the fighter is adjacent, he's probably melee. You can move them 1 space, still double attack, and you can't be double attacked on their turn because they will have to maneuver up to you. And we see it on the bottom there, feints destroy your existence. As you can imagine, with a character that uses fluid resources as his main thing, anything that prevents that is bad, but we'll get to that. Alright, starting with the cards. First, we have the Alternating Current. It's a 5 value attack for Tesla with a boost value of 3 that says after combat, choose one. Charge both coils or discharge both coils to have Tesla recover 2 health. Alright, so first of all, 5 value attacks are great. We know that from Commanding Impact or similar cards. Surprise attack, 5 value attacks usually deal 1 to 2 damage, which is nice to have. Also, being able to choose is nice, kinda. You almost always have a option on Tesla's cards, but we'll see on this one, you basically always can only do one useful thing, because if you have 0 or 1 coil, you can't discharge 2 to recover 2 health. So you'll basically always pick to charge both coils. And if you have 2 coils, well, there's no real need to charge 2 coils, so you can heal. Technically, if you wanna, let's say you attack with this first action, and you don't want to spend your coils on healing because you want to attack again and use them on the second card, then you can still choose to charge both, even though you have both coils charged. But it's a neat scenario, but it can happen. Also, often the coil charge is better to keep up pressure, so you'd rather use this as a first action if you just spent your 2 coils on defense before, so you don't have any. So you catch your opponent by surprise, charge both, and then can attack on second action with both coils again. Although heal is nice if you have low health, because your health pool, like I said, it's pretty low. But yeah, Tesla usually wants to be the aggressor, so charging both coils is, in my opinion, the better deal of the two, but there are situations for both. Alright, next up we have a 4-value attack for Tesla with a boost value of 3 called 7 Hertz. And it says after combat, you may discharge coils. 1. Gain an action, both discharge, also draw 1 card. Okay, 4-value attacks are nice, and options are great as always. With the first discharge, gain an action. That is basically one of your key discharges in the deck because this leads to some stupid combat potential. You have 3 of these, so if you can somehow chain them together in one turn, which can happen, that's so much damage you can burst out in one turn that your opponent always has to be scared of this. The draw can be nice in some situations, like if you plan to just charge both after anyways, then why not spend the second one? But usually it's not used because you want to keep up the pressure, and if you're on 0 coils, your opponent usually is not really scared of you or can predict what you will play. Something like the print 5 before to charge both again, or any other card that doesn't really resolve around coils. So this card makes you extremely threatening even if you have only 1 coil charged, because then you can still gain an extra action and combo off. And this basically confirms your aggressive playstyle. This card, if you see this card, you should know, okay, I want a combo, I'm the aggressor. Okay, next up we have a 3-value attack for a Tesla with a boost value of 4, being Death Ray. It says during combat you may discharge coils. 1 discharge, this card's value is 5. 2 discharges, instead this card's value is 7. Okay, first of all, this is your only 4 boost in deck, but it's still great to be able to move up to 6 spaces with a ranged fighter, so you'll basically always be able to reach your opponent if you have this card. A potential 7 is nice to have as a finisher, and also to end one of your combos. It's huge damage output, although it's often used as a bait and not as a double charge, because being aggressive is kind of your key game plan, and if you just use these, you'll be very predictable, and you'll usually get 3 damage with this over a max value block, but then you spend both coils and your opponent is kind of out of danger. So you're not sad if this gets fainted, usually, except if you want to use this as a finisher to your combo or to end the game. But it can be nice in some situations, like if your opponent defends with some other 2-value defense, then yeah, sure, go for it. 5 damage always. But just decide, depending on the situation and the defense your opponent plays. I usually wouldn't double discharge under 4 damage, or even discharge at all, because there are just so many other great things you can do with 2 coils with Tesla, and damage is not always the right thing to do. Maybe you want to just discharge another one for 7 Hertz to get 4 damage in because they don't have any defense anymore, or then you discharge a second time and go on with a chain and deal more damage, or you have some other useful ways to use your cards. I think this is kind of linear, but still 7-value attacks are 7-value attacks. Alright, next up we have X-Ray Radiation. It's a 4-value printed versatile card for Tesla with a boost value of 1. And it says, during combat, Reveal the top card of your opponent's deck. You may discharge coils. 1. Discard that card. 2. Also add its boost value to this card's value. Okay, so first of all, this is your highest printed block value that you have in your deck, so you will usually use it as a block. It's also your best defense if you go for value, um, because you can discharge both and then kinda get around a 6 value defense reliably. Um, the effect is really good because before you discharge anything, you get to know the top card of your opponent's deck. So deck knowledge itself is already great. You'll know what your opponent gets next, and then you can decide on the situation. Usually, the first discharge is almost always worth it, because milling a card of your opponent's deck that they can't even use, that they don't have a chance to use, is just great. That's basically a random discard without your opponent knowing it. Also, like I said, it removes a card from your opponent's deck, so it also helps in fatigue. And that's just another great point. Like, if there's a regroup on top and you want to keep the coils for a double attack on the next turn, yeah, maybe you don't discharge, but it's almost always worth it. The second, however, is way more conditional, since this is already a full value defense, and say if your opponent hits something with something like a lock, then it's 6, you would take 2. And in my opinion, since you want to be on the aggressive side more often than not, I think it's better to keep the 1 coil and then aggress on your next turn, because 1 coil to mitigate 2 damage is like meh, meh. It's not optimal, but like if you don't die, if you discharge the second one, yeah, sure. If you would die otherwise. But yeah, and it's just great for fatigue and a value game if you need it. Just like I said before, milling a card is always great. Next up, we have Polyphase Coils. It's a 3 value versatile for Tesla with a boost value of 1, and it says immediately you may discharge coils. 1 discharge, cancel all effects on your opponent's card. 2 discharges, also ignore that card's value. Okay, so 3 value blocks or attacks are good-ish, bad-ish, depending. But the discharges are what makes this card so incredibly strong, because just the first one is a 3 value cancel, which is ridiculous, as we know from Bigfoot with Just Your Imagination. 3 value cancels are really good. But then you have the option to discharge a second one, which ignores value. So you basically have a Ice from Little Red's deck, which we covered last time, ignoring your card's value and ignoring their effects. So they basically didn't play a card against you, which is ridiculous. That's probably one of the best cards we see in Tesla's deck and in the game itself. And you can always decide depending on the situation. Like if you play against someone like Sinbad, you will know, okay, he played a Voyage card. All right, so I just want to cancel and I don't have to ignore the value because it will only be a 2. But if he throws a Commanding, for example, you could decide to discharge both and then you don't take any damage. So this card is like your get out of jail free. If you play it on defense and have both coils, you'll basically never take damage. But you can also attack with it. And if this doesn't get fainted, it's almost guaranteed 3 damage, because you cancel their effect and ignore their value. So if they play like a skirmish, the skirmish is just a 0 value block without any effects. So 3 damage, this is great. However, you don't want to play this against the defensive immediate effects, other than feints, of course. Like something like Shield Formation from Yen, because those effects will still trigger before yours go. So in that example, you would still have to discard a card so that Yen doesn't get the Archer back. And if you don't, Yen basically only takes 1, because the Archer will suck up 2 of the damage and then your 2 coils are basically wasted. So be aware of that if your opponent's deck has some kind of nasty defensive immediate effects that you're worried about, maybe try to bait those cards out before you play this. Otherwise, just go for it. Try. Who knows if they have it. Next up, we have Lightning Storm. It's also a 3-value versatile for Tesla with a boost value of 1, and it says after combat, you may discharge coils. 1 discharge, deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter in your zone. 2 discharge, instead deal 2 damage. Okay, 3-value versatiles are good. Why not? However, the effect is great because zone ping can reach from nice to have to incredible. If you discharge 1 coil against any 1 health sidekicks, you can almost wipe them all in just 1 attack, which is ridiculous. That's really good in something like the Electra matchup, where the hand can't feint. You just play this against them and all are dead with 1 coil discharge. This is really good. However, small tip from my side over here. Always attack the fighter with the least movement effects or cancels, so that you can hit as many targets as possible. For example, Medusa, if you attack the Harpies, they have Hounds, which move all Harpies. They have Feint, which would stop this, and Dash. That's 3 different cards that would basically deny you the full value. However, if you attack Medusa herself, she only can use Dash or Feints. So there are less cards that could stop this. So always think about it to get the maximum value possible and to give your opponent the least chance to stop this. Also, if you're able to hit 2 different fighters with more than 1 health, it's often worth to discharge both, because effect damage ignores block values. If they play something like a skirmish, you will still deal the damage, no matter if their block is higher. This can be great against important sidekicks, like against something like Huntsman, Maria from Widow's deck, or anything else that's kind of important. You can discharge both and then deal 2 damage to both the sidekick and the hero if they are in the same zone, which can be really good. That adds up to 4 total extra damage that you get, and your opponent can't do anything about it. Ideally, you pair this card with remote control, which we'll talk about later. So you can set up the positions just as you want and then deal as much damage as possible. Next up, we have Repulsion Blast, being a 2-value versatile with a boost value of 2. And it says, after combat, move the opposing fighter up to 2 spaces. You may discharge coils. 1 discharge, also move Tesla up to 2 spaces. 2 discharges, also your opponent discards 1 random card. Okay, 2-value versatiles are usually not that great. They probably won't deal any damage and they block like almost nothing. We know that from Feint. Feint is not used as a value block, but for the effect cancel. So this on defense will probably lead to much damage, and on offense it won't deal any, probably. However, having effects without having to discharge coils is nice. You can always move the opposing fighter up to 2 spaces, which is basically your only movement in the deck. You still have remote control, but this is the only movement on a combat card you have. So this is basically your only way to get out of pins, because you can move the opponent away and then on your turn move out. And it can help with some positioning issues. It's also great to break combos without discharging. If someone like Bruce or the Raptors come and attack you with a Jeet or anything that gains an action, you can move their fighter out of the way, and then they would still have an action but couldn't attack you again. So that's great. About the discharge, the first one is usually not worth. Like, if you already moved the opposing fighter out of the way, you played this probably because you want to avoid a double attack and move them away, so you move them out of the zone or not anymore adjacent to you, depending if they're ranged or melee. So there's no real need to also move Tesla. However, the second discharge, as we know, random discards are very powerful. However, it's very costly. because your first coil is basically wasted on the effect. There's nothing in the value game that you really get from that. The second one is great, but this is mostly used as a base attack because you have better ways to spend your coils. And so this gets probably thrown away more often than not for chosen discards or boosts or something like that. However, if your opponent plays a grindy value game, yeah, sure, this can help. Random discards are still great. And if you don't see an opportunity to go in for a big attack turn, then why not? Do it. Maybe you hit a good card out of the hand, and then next turn you can really pop off. Next up, we have Kinetic Induction, being a 2-value versatile for Tesla with a boost value of 1, and it says, after combat, charge 1 coil. If you won the combat, charge both. Okay, we talked about it earlier. 2-value versatiles, not that great. Won't deal any damage, won't prevent much damage, but it's nice to keep your coils charged. This is your primary braid attack, kinda like a regroup. Also with the effect, if you won, you charge both. So this is probably best used if attacking with 0 coils, so you can charge some and then have more options for your second attack. On first action with 1 coil, so you get the second one guaranteed if this doesn't get fainted, and then you're able to discharge both on the next attack. Or on defense, if you only have 1 coil, for example, you spent 1 before, or you ended your turn with only 1 charged, so you charge 1 again and then start your turn with 2 coils again, catching your opponent by surprise because they don't have more time to react to it. Because they expected you to only have 1 coil, maybe even less if you discharge on defense, but then you play this as defense, gain 1, then they can't do anything about it anymore and have less time to react, and you get a juicy 2 coil turn. Also, this is a great card to throw into 1-half sidekicks, because often they might not defend, giving you 3 coils. So if you attack with this first action into something like a hand from Electra, then they only have 1 block card, and if you know she doesn't have those, yeah, this is free charge for you. But yeah, this is sadly still a 2-value versatile, so it's your next throwaway card after Repulsion. Okay, then the last actual combat card in Tesla's deck, we have Intense Experimentation, being the only blue. It's a 3-value block card with a boost value of 2, and it says, after combat, draw 1 card. You may discharge coils. 1 discharge, instead draw 2 cards. 2 discharges, instead draw 3 cards, and Tesla recovers 1 health. Okay, so 3 blocks are nice. It's basically the middle, usually good, not great, but it helps. But effects without discharging are great, as we saw. Here, drawing 1 card. And in Tesla's case, this is extremely good, because it helps you to keep up hand advantage even without spending any coils. If your opponent attacks you, you both spend 1 card for the combat, but then this card replaces itself basically without even discharging. So you kind of net 1 card out of the combat, which can catch your opponent by surprise and lead to some more action turns where they might not be able to defend, and you can just keep up the pressure. So this can lead to some huge hand swings, because if you discharge both, you draw 3 instead of 1. So you net 3 cards, and then also you recover 1 health. This is your second healing in the deck, next to the Print 5. So this is kind of a card where you say no discharge or 2. Because like if you discharge 1, yeah, it's 1 additional card, but the second one is way better because you get 2 and 1 health, so it's just better value. Also, you want this as early as possible to pressure your opponent as much as possible. Because if you see this early game, you get hand advantage and can pressure more, attack more, action chain, and maybe kill them. If you see this later through the game, you might not even want to play this at all because it will draw you cards, and drawing cards is bad for fatigue. And discharging to draw even more can be really bad, because then your opponent will be up in deck count and you'll have to approach, and maybe that's just what they wanted. But yeah, it can still lead to some big hand swings, so it might still be worth. Okay, first scheme in the deck we have Fully Charged with a boost value of 1. It says charge both coils, gain 1 action. Okay, so this is probably the simplest card in the deck. It's great to catch your opponent off guard because you might just spend your 2 coils on defense. They think, okay, they're safe now, but then, your turn, you charge both coils, gain an action, and you basically got a free turn, 2 actions, 2 coils. This is also your primary way next to Kinetic to maintain your coil flow, so you can set this up, and action gain is great to keep up the aggression because you'll still be able to double attack, probably, and this just perfectly strings into your combo turns. You can play this first action, charge both, 7 Hertz, 7 Hertz, action gain, and then just finish with something like print 5 and then into 7. That's just ridiculous combo potential, and this card can string that all together, even though if your opponent pressured you before and you had to spend coils, this is just great. Sadly, there are only 2 copies. And then the last card in the deck, we have Remote Control. We touched on this before. It says move all opposing fighters up to 2 spaces, gain an action. It has a boost value of 3. So moving all opposing fighters is great. Usually, if you do a maneuver, you only move your fighter, so you can control what you did, but you can't control what the opponent set up before, so you're not really able to do what you want sometimes because they deny you from it with their positioning. This can break that all apart. It's basically like a Command the Storms from Merlin's deck with action gain, except that you don't get to move yourself as well, but I think that's totally worth it. This can give you double attack opportunities when your opponent doesn't expect them, because maybe they ended not in your zone and thought, yeah, they're safe. You play this first action, move them into your zone, and just go off with a great combo. Also, this can be used to separate opposing fighters or keep them close together. For example, with Yanenga, you might wanna get the archers out of Yen's zone and just combo off on Yen so she can split the damage. However, you might also want to get them all together to get some incredible lightning storm value. So this card is just extremely good and versatile with the positioning you can do, and it's great to isolate fighters, kill sidekicks fast, or do anything else ridiculous with your cards. Alright, so in conclusion, Tesla is usually played as a hyper-aggressive combo fighter that just runs your opponent out of defense. His versatility with the discharging give him many options throughout the game, but also make him really hard to navigate. I'm so good at reading. If, however, the game seems to not be going that way, you can still play a mean value game with technically 6 random discards and low card draw. Yes, you have low card draw. Sure, you have experimentation, but that's optional. It's only 1 card that you draw if you don't discharge any. So in some games, maybe against Medusa, if you don't get a good combo at the start, you'll just play the value game, discard some cards from her, and then even outvalue her, which can happen. That's funny. But yeah, usually just go and shred your opponent with Tesla, and he's just so much fun. Alright, so the Tesla card tier list. Yeah, I don't think I have to say that the placements of the cards vary depending on the matchup. But yeah, in S tier, the best of the best, we have 7 Hertz, your main combo potential card that just keeps your aggression together. Then we have Polyphase, one of the best blocks or attacks in the game, in my opinion, still. Experimentation to keep up pressure, hand advantage. Then in A tier, we have X-Ray for the top deck discard or just your max block. Lightning Storm for the versatile effect damage. Print 5 for charging coils or healing, depending what you need. Remote Control just versatile card. You can do so much ridiculous stuff with this. And then in B we have Death Ray. Like I said, it's still great to have a 7 value attack, but usually there are better things you can do with your coils. Um, Kinetic, it's good to keep up coils, but not great. You won't really do anything with the card itself. Fully charged is also great, but it's kinda there. It's nice to have for the 2 coil charge and to start, but I think there are just better cards. And then Repulsion, the only one in C tier. Yeah, it's just usually not worth it. But hey, movement is movement. It's nice. Why not? So, the matchups for Tesla. This time I haven't played all of them. I actually asked Zigrazio and Chad in Discord for help because they're like more into Tesla than I was before. Especially Zigrazio helped me a lot. Thank you for those. Big shout out. Um, if you're interested in Tesla, look at his tier list. You probably get kind of a feel what he's good against, what he's not good against. You can say everything that has low card draw or no cancels, stuff like that. Tesla usually shreds them. If there's someone who is also hyper aggressive or is Sherlock, then Tesla sucks. And then, since in the last video's comments there was a question regarding maps, I've also decided to include those. Um, Tesla wants small maps because you want to just attack every turn without having to waste big boost values or any boosts at all. So something like Raptor Paddock, Point Pleasant, Sanctum, tight small maps where you can reach most zones in one maneuver are great for Tesla, so your opponent can't hide anyone and they can't run away, so you'll just shred them. Alright, then that was it. Thank you for watching. Shout out again to Zigrazio and Chad for helping. Um, it was really fun to get into Tesla with them. I learned many tricks, just as I hope you did in this video. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. Also tell me what character you want me to cover next. I'm planning on doing something like Tomoe, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, if you have any wishes, just write them there. And also one last thing. Since I just saw the return of Full Send Friday, and now Baked Goods also got his Thursday, I forgot the name. Thursday adventure stuff with baked goods. I'm very sorry. Um, I thought about maybe renaming this format to Strategy Sunday. Who knows? I think it sounds just cool or lazy or silly, however you want to call it. I like it. So tell me what you think about that. And yeah, that was it. Until next time.